All right, so we have Catherine Skinner here, who's a principal at BBN. And so Catherine actually has been at BBN since 2010, and she's from Adelaide, or Radelaide, as you guys call it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And she's worked on, so one of the reasons why I invited Catherine is to do with a lot of the competitions that she worked on at BBN, and also a lot of the large projects. So some are like the Key Quarter Tower, which is in Sydney, as well as the Westmead Millennium Institute. She's also done a lot of collaborations, especially with some of the international practices like 3XN, which is based in Denmark, and I believe you spent some time over there as well. Yeah. So the next panel member is Matthew Boynton, just over the left there. So he's a BIM manager at Floth, who is Sustainable Building Consultants. Matthew helps implement BIM at his organisation and also does BIM training. And he's been involved in the industry via like Brisbane and whatnot. And so I invited Matthew because he's previously used Newforma at his old workplace, and then just as he joined Floth, we had just started implementation of Newforma as well. And last but not least is Joe Baines, which you may or may not know, and if you haven't, then you know his beard. And so he's a director at BIM Edge. He's also a podcaster, which Joe and I both sort of do randomly from time to time, called The Architecture. Also, as you know, he's heavily involved in the Brisbane committee, and he's worked with Revit since 2005, is that right?
Sounds right.
Yeah, sure. And then lastly, that's me over there, and that's my little boy Alex. That was when he was 2 months. He's like 6 now, so I probably need to update my professional photo. So just to give you a bit of background, I joined Newforma about 10 months ago. I came from BBN previously, that's how I know these two over there. And I looked after the information systems. So I guess the idea about today's session is for you guys to go back, when you go back to your organisations, and think about the bits of project information that you encounter as you work on your projects. And it's not necessarily just working on the Revit model, working in like Windows Explorer for the files and whatnot, but you know, you often talking to your BD team as they're putting together the bids and proposals. There's the finance team that are involved when it comes to like the invoicing, timesheets, that sort of thing. So I guess as part of the overall project delivery, there is a lot of information that is generated, and that flows through from the beginning of the project through to well after the end of the project, that many different people sort of have touch points with. And if that project information is inaccurate, then it can cause issues from a legal perspective. And some of you guys might have sort of had this happen in the past before. Some of you probably going through some of that now. So, you know, there's some pains. And so the idea is to have these guys sort of answer some hard-hitting questions that I've got about project information and how it works. So we can just turn this off now that I think. So we'll start off with an easy one. And so I guess thinking back on like your experience and whatnot, how important is that you guys find accurate project information to your organisation, so that, you know, from like a legal perspective, technical debt, and also like from a contextual project. Would you be able to just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll start. Is it on?
You said talk.
He said it was on.
Close.
Okay. Like right there.
Like you're eating an ice cream.
Okay. So for us, like Willis suggested, I've worked on a bunch of competitions over the last couple of years, and in my current position with BBN, I'm chair of the design technology group. So we spend a lot of time talking about design technology issues. Surprisingly, a lot of those are around Revit. And recently there's been a lot of discussion about project setup. So one of the things in the front end of projects is getting that right and actually spending the time to get it right. And the kind of dividends that it pays, getting that information in first thing and doing the right thing. So I think it's kind of hard to know in a risk mitigation type sense. You know, the opposite of a disaster is kind of the absence of a disaster, which you can't really say, well, this is a singularly momentous occasion that we avoided all of those things. But certainly we've seen projects where we've had to go back and rectify locations for models and sort out base information that really you should be getting right from the start. There's I guess 3 reasons why we at BBM want to get the right information. I guess in the first instance, so that we can actually produce accurate data. We can do analysis on the models, and from a marketing perspective, so that people actually think that we're good at what we do and they appreciate the work that we do, and we seem reputable, and we can kind of hold our heads high and say we've actually done a good job and we understand what we're talking about when we say the sun comes from this side. It's actually coming from that side. It's not, somewhere else. So, that's just Revit. What do you guys want to talk about?
Do you find, sorry, just to add to that, do you find also because, your project information is coming from your ERP, so your financial system, so your information system if you have one, something like Newforma or not, maybe if you use like a digital asset management system as well. So things like your project number, project name, they probably flow through all of those. And I'm sure you guys probably encounter this as well, in that when a project first starts up, it's been given a project name, but then maybe halfway through the project or even partway through the tendering process, the project name changes, right? But then all of a sudden you've got project information in, say, your financial system, it's called project 123, but then in your other systems, it's probably called ABC or something like that. And it's trying to make sure that that information is sort of flowing through. And so whether or not you have like a single source of truth, whether that's your financial system, some of our customers, I know, probably previously they would have had like an Excel spreadsheet to try and track all that information. So
yeah, recently
I do apologise. I just happened to think we found 3 chairs. It's a bit of an ask in a conference.
we can turn this off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone.
I won't talk about this too long, but we at BiLT recently went through a process. We used to give projects because they came into the office, so an opportunity might be given what was called a business development number, and that was a number that lived with it until that job was won, and then it would change to another job that lived in another drive, which sounds like it's a reasonable kind of approach to things, but it's actually incredibly fraught, because then you end up with these 2 locations that are entirely discrete, and as Willis says, they're not just separate numbers, they're probably separate names, because the project might be something here and then something else by the end of the job. So we're now in a better system where everything kind of, it starts at day 1, we set that up, and that lives with the project for its life.
I'll just quickly. There's a couple of things that I can think of. One of which is just contact lists, which if you've got a distribution list that you're sending out to clients, you have to keep it up to date, and it's really easy for people to fall off that list, and sometimes that's on purpose. Maybe you don't want to involve them in certain documents and then they get removed permanently, but just maintaining that list is quite a challenge, so having a good system in place for doing that is helpful. And then with another thing is timesheets. So just having accurate data there is really helpful, I guess, for giving insight to the fees, obviously, and managing that. So those are 2 areas that.
Yeah, so the point you mentioned about contact sheets, just as a hands up there, for those that are working on projects, do you have your contact sheets in an Excel spreadsheet in the project drive? Or maybe like a Word document that's in the project drive, or a PDF that someone just sends out maybe at the start of the project, right? Here's our consultant list. It's just going to sit on the drive there, but no one really knows whether or not that information is accurate or not. So I think being able to either get that, I know previously we had it, it was in that, we also had it in Newforma, but then some systems we had using the financial system as that single source of truth for contact information, so that would flow through to the other systems, so that when it gets updated in that financial system, then all those contacts flow through and everyone on the project has the correct contact information.
I find we have a lot of problems, not just where I work now, but historically, with data accuracy over time and where to find where it came from. So the 2, I suppose, examples of that are internal information and external stuff. So stuff coming from a client where a client says, no, we wanted this all along. And you're like, no, you didn't. You specifically asked for the other thing. Going and finding where they actually asked for that and tracking that down, so you can say, we did all this work because you asked us to. It wasn't just because we felt, we weren't busy enough or anything. So there's that kind of stuff, which is definitely a legal issue because we want to be able to charge for that work. And the internal stuff is kind of similar. Someone's made a decision on a project, particularly design decisions, and they might have put a lot of time and effort into figuring out why that's the best solution. And then the history of how they made that decision is, saved in a model that's archived off, or it's just no longer accessible. And an example of that might be like an offset from a boundary. Someone's, they've got an updated plan that shows a new boundary layout. They've gone to a lot of effort to check all of the codes, make sure it's all compliant and offset it by the right amount. And then the project moves on and that data gets lost. And at some point someone goes, oh, can we move it closer to the boundary? And you can't just say no, you have to explain why. And you've basically got to do all of that work again to justify why you've made that decision. So one of the things that I really like is having a lot of milestone versions of files that you can go back to, so you can show the progression of design and how you ended up where you were, and particularly associating that data together. So if there was an email from the client or from council or something that related to that decision, that you can somehow connect those things together. It's something that I should say that the company I'm working with at the moment doesn't use Newforma, and I've been asking them to get it because I really miss it, which sounds stupid to miss a piece of software, but you miss the convenience is what you miss. And it was always good for me at BBM when they were working with it that I would often get asked to come and assist with a project having very little information. How can you help me with this file or on this project? And I would ask people, they wouldn't even be able to tell me where the project's located because they'd saved a shortcut on their desktop and they don't even know the file path. So I would always just have like Newforma over for that reason, so I could just really rapidly just, because you can type in a very vague thing and find the information you're looking for. So it certainly saved a lot of time for me. That stuff from external, we just had it on a project where there was an argument coming up that we built over the boundary on a thing was going to cost millions and millions of dollars to rectify, and we were right, so yay. But it was a huge amount of effort to find all the paperwork and find their notice from council and find and that the people who were making this argument were referring to an old RP plan that had different information that was outdated, but we couldn't find our original of the new updated one, and I was saying to the management, I bet I could find this in Newforma in 10 minutes. I think we spent 2 or 3 days manually looking through. Finally found essentially a CAD file of the boundary that someone had saved and renamed. These are problems that can be easily avoided if you've got a good data management system. And the other one I'd say is having people who know how to use it and actually work with it. Because if they get that info and go, that's great, I'll save it to my desktop and go home and never see it again, then it kind of doesn't matter how good the system is if no one puts anything into it.
Yeah, and sorry, just following up on a question about working with Revit models and stuff like that, Joe. Have you had a thought, or how do you deal with, say, a digital sort of legacy? So, working with older versions of Revit, or in the archival usefulness of that project data, because in 20 years' time, most of the stuff probably won't exist anymore.
This has been a thorn in my side for a long time, and it's not just an older version of Revit. Who's done a project where they've gone, here's the CAD files from the last job, start working on that? Or we had one at the Brisbane airport where here's all our files, they're in an old version of MicroStation. How are we even supposed to open this, to do anything with it? And when we open it, we can't validate that it matched the original plans that came out. If you're working on a project, someone goes, we've already got the building all modelled up in Revit, and it comes and it's in 2009 Revit format. How reliable are you going to expect that model to be once you upgrade it through 12 versions of Revit or something to get it to, not that many, but to the current day? Is stuff going to drop off through all those upgrades? So it becomes a real issue, and people start to go, you could get an IFC or something like that. Well, I have enough trouble as it is pulling in an IFC that was made yesterday and knowing that it comes in and it's exactly right. The other part there is having the models or model formats that don't exchange all of the data. So, for example, if it was done in MicroStation or ArchiCAD or something like that, when I pull it off, it's not a one-to-one exchange. I don't get 100% of the data from one come across to the other perfectly. So if I'm losing data every time I'm doing a translation, and then 20 years later I'm trying to get an old file and get all that up, I have very little, confidence in what I'm going to get at that point in the future. And it's something that we're looking at, and feel free to start a business doing this because I think it's a good business idea. But I think particularly the asset owners need to start looking at getting someone to provide a service where, every 6 to 12 months they come in and update their digital asset of their physical asset. So that's not just upgrading the file to the latest version, that's making sure that, hey, if you added an extension to the building or changed out plant equipment, that you're updating that data and that as well. And I think that to me looks like the next kind of boom thing in our industry for facilities management. It's not just managing the facility, but managing that digital asset and keeping it current and valuable and making sure it's actually useful to do things on site. I know we can do stuff, this year that I couldn't do 18 months ago in, things like gaming engines, where I'd say, okay, perhaps I want to transition it across to that and manage an asset with a digital gaming engine rather than with Revit or something like that. But every time you make one of those changes, you have to validate everything that you've brought across, and you need to make sure that that is then still has value and is meaningful 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I mean, some of these assets, like bridges and those sort of things, have extraordinarily long life cycles. Chris Needham does a good talk on the Opera House, where he's talking about, well, they've got drawings that are on paper in decimal inches. Those are the original records of how this stuff was built. How do you then validate that, hey, I want to install something, how useful are these documents? So having a digital system to track it and an ability to, I suppose, set a path between now and the future, an upgrade path to manage this data. I think it's a huge issue with no immediate solution inside.
And is that something that you guys, like Catherine and Matthew, is sort of thinking about at BVN and at Floth? I know when I was at BVN, it was something that was sort of on the peripheral, like, hey, I remember keeping like a version of MicroSection just so you could open up those old project files.
Yeah, and that's definitely a thing we still do. I think there are 3 licenses of MicroStation kicking around at the moment. It is definitely, I can have 2 reasons that's of interest to us. Firstly, for archival reasons, it doesn't really do anything if it's just sitting in a file and no one can open it. So sure, we might have that data, but how useful is it? And I suppose the other thing is actually extracting the information from that. So understanding what we were doing 10 years ago is a kind of interesting thing, even if it isn't necessarily informing what we're doing now or where we might go to, but having the more information you can have on where we've kind of come from is pretty valuable, I think. Maybe there's no huge impetus for us to get that information. I suspect the archival stuff is probably more relevant, but it's still really interesting for us to kind of understand what that process is, particularly when we think back to those projects and kind of think, well, we were telling clients that this is the future, and then the future kind of didn't turn into that. It's nice to know when you're wrong too.
Yeah. And even like on projects where you've worked on them like 20 years ago or so, and then you've been asked to come back and sort of either extend it or maybe refurbish it or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And Joe, that was a good one. The BAC is a nice one because we have then intermittently over the last 10 or so years worked on different iterations of the international terminal. And it has 1,000 different formats just because of the time scale that you're talking about. So it's near impossible to know whether you're looking at accurate data. And then, add to that this whole thing has been built at some point, and so the level of accuracy that your model has is probably negligible, really, in the end.
I did a full day measure up at the domestic terminal with a laser measure with the plans that they provide. So they're all AutoCAD files, converted MicroStation, and I didn't get one measurement that was even close. Like, checking the plans, it's like, okay, these 2 columns should be 12 meters apart. They're like 12.3 meters apart. Like, that's not building tolerance. That's way out. And they want to be able to model up to bring plant equipment through and know that it's going to fit between columns and into those back of house spaces. and the information, the digital information they have, is just so dramatically different to what's on site. Even to the point where there's there's holes in walls on the plan that is clearly a solid wall and has always been a solid wall because it's exposed cast concrete. This hole was never made ever, and it's still on their documentation. So yeah, I think particularly those really big assets, it's a bigger problem. If it's a residential house, then you probably don't care that much. I care about mine, but does anyone else have a really high detailed model of their own house? Does anyone else? Yay, OCD.
Biggest model I have.
Biggest model,
is my house. It's only 100 square meters or something, but it's got a lot of data. I was just thinking what I'd like to see more of, and it's kind of a difficult one, but is getting point cloud scans of the thing, and that's probably going to outlast the Revit models. It doesn't help when you start a project in an already dated model, like 2016, Revit 2016. We just started one recently. We should be doing 2020 now. I guess that's point cloud is a good way. That's a lot of storage you've got to be able to handle in your servers or in the cloud, if you will.
We just got one that was 500 gig, and they went, we'll send it over. How? What do you mean? we can't download 500 gigs for the whole week of downloads for the office sort of thing. So we had to drive it.
Yeah, that's what you got to do it while it's being constructed.
Yeah.
You've got to allow for that, and that could be, you could do it a number of times, or during the construction process. But just definitely before the cladding goes in. I think it's something that contractors should be trying to do more often.
That's right. A lot of surveyors have come to me in Perth and said, "Oh, look, we've done a point cloud, we took the ceiling down, but we don't know which pipes which, all that sort of stuff." So.
Is anyone here from Arab? I was just going to give you a shout because we did some work checking their point clouds for them on their new office, and while it was being built, they did multiple scans before the ceiling went up and everything, and then got us to go through and essentially move the digital things to line up with the point clouds so that the ASCONs actually reflected the model, and it's one of the first times I've done it. I use that is it Clarity,
Edgewise? Oh, sorry.
It's only clear.
Clear Edge.
The one that the curly haired man loves. You know what I'm saying? Kelly Cone. Getting Kelly Cone. That's the curly haired man I'm thinking of. Kelly Cone's company. Anyway, Clear Edge 3D is what it's called. But it was a really important workflow for us, and it allowed what their software does is essentially scans the point cloud against the model, and then you can set rules. If something is out of whack, it'll highlight that area, and it'll essentially cut the point cloud down to just a little bubble of points around the thing that doesn't line up within the tolerance you've set. And it meant I could, take a really big amount of scan data and open it easily in Revit. I could go to each bit that was a problem, move the model that I needed. It's the best point cloud experience I've had ever, so full credit to them. But I can see without doing that, without having that record and updating the model, it's because even if you've got the point cloud, there's no metadata attached to anything. It's just points. So you still need a BIM model to go, well, this array of points is a duct, and it's got this much insulation, and it's, don't drill holes in it when you're putting things in the ceiling, that kind of stuff. It's a bit of an endless problem as these files get larger, and I'm sure there'll be new file formats in the next 5 to 10 years. There's always someone in the exhibit hall pushing, I've got this great new thing. And if someone comes out with a better thing than Revit, I'll swap.
I guess what we're also just in new software. I guess what we're also hoping for is that models will be continued to be used into the FM stage, so we can use their models. I don't have Maximo. I've never used VO or anything like that, so I don't know how well you can adopt that, but it's one possibility.
I have tried it. I think Victoria was trying to get that sort of ongoing data back into a Revit model, and we did it as a test project. But basically, we ended up making a lot of custom parameters, and then constantly, last time serviced, pushing that in as a parameter, so you can then attach that to things and keep a record of when it was serviced. And
do you need all that in the Revit model, or would you?
If you're trying to use it for FM, then if you've got a pump, you want to see a history of if your service history. So in general, you'd use software that is designed for that. Yeah. So we were doing a test case to see if you could use Revit and the BIM model to do that. And I can tell you it is technically possible, but not advisable. It's not a great database to store information in there, but it did work.
I would have thought you'd use the Dorothea styles where it links to the object in Revit and Dorothea stores all the information.
Is Chris Rizal? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Dorothea. But yeah, I find it to be a very clunky way. I actually found it was way easier to just deal natively in the Revit file than it was to go in and out, where I'm kind of enter stuff in the model and then get back out. So for me, I think the final product needs to be a model where you're interacting with the model and getting all the stuff in, whether that's in a gaming engine or it's in like a I've just forgotten the other one you mentioned. What's the other one? The Phil Reed was pushing for a while. The M6 build.
M6.
It's a pretty singular view of Dorothea in the way that it manages data in an object, isn't it? I mean, it's much bigger. It's designed to do much more.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we often find as part of the benefit to Dorothea is having that history that you talk about. So you save milestone after milestone of the model, but actually this one Dorothea system has everything you need that tells you all of the reasons why those things were changed and all of the people who were involved in that process. So, I mean, that's a really valuable thing for us and for the clients to see at the end of the day.
Yeah, I know it's certainly had huge adoption, and don't take my opinion on it as a reason not to buy a piece of software. But yeah, I personally think there's better ways to do that, and they could do a lot of work on the user interface and the way that you actually deal with stuff. But yeah, if they were to actually add a model interaction system that's highly connected to the way Dorothea works, I think they'd be onto a winner. But yeah, as I say, that's a personal opinion. I'm sure Chris will hit me later.
Are you finding that, I guess, like with all this work that gets done with the models and I guess all this extra work, that then you theoretically want to be going back and updating like your other pieces of project information, right? Whether it's in your financial system or whether it's in something like Newforma or whatnot, so that you do have that constant record and then you can always refer back to it if you ever need to, as to those decisions that were made.
Yeah, and it's not just going to be decisions necessarily. I mean, the cost of the project is always going to change. So there's 1,000 pieces of data in there that require a bit of a manual overlay to a certain extent, certainly where we are at the moment. If there's a better way of doing it, I'm all ears. But it does require that everyone kind of takes ownership of that. Well, this project started out as $4 million, but actually it's $400 million now. So how do we keep track of that sort of stuff?
Yeah. And so can you, I guess each of you will have some sort of story about this, but a situation where you've worked with the wrong project information and then there's been some serious sort of ramifications. So maybe because I know one system's recorded the site details wrong or something like that.
User error.
Yeah, possibly. Never.
Not my error. To be clear. Yeah, I will talk about user error because that one happens a lot. That's the human-machine interface breakdown where the information is ultimately correct on the system, and then someone has essentially entered it incorrectly, translating over to something else. So they've got a survey in CAD, and then they've tried to type in the boundaries, and they've got numbers back to front or something like that. We had one of those a couple of years ago where. And I was genuinely shocked they didn't notice it because the site was a different shape than what it looked like on the survey. So it seemed fairly obvious to me that it was not the right shape boundary. But yeah, the other ones that has happened to us is where we've had bad information, where we had an old version of essentially like a BIM execution plan that was issued to us that had specifically requested all these BIM deliverables. And they had updated that and essentially decided they didn't need any of it. We didn't know that. It had been sent to us, but it was, no one saw it essentially. So we put a lot of work into putting all these like Kobe coding into stuff. And they were like, oh, we took that out. How nice of you to put all that in for us for free. And like, what do you mean you took it out, sort of thing? Like, it was just a conversational thing. He said, oh, we took that out, but you did it anyway, kind of thing. And like, we put a lot of work into getting all this sorted for you. But yeah, I can't remember the exact details why we didn't get it, but it sort of went, to someone's email and they weren't in the office and it never got sort of circulated. But that was only 8 weeks ago or something. and that cost us probably one person about 4 days going through, checking all the codes, getting it all up to date, just because of an email. We've had similar situations working with people overseas where files haven't synchronized properly, and we're working off older versions. So this was a consultant in, I think it was Thailand, who was doing the structure, and they were using BIM 360 design, but their internet was not very good, and it just wasn't updating. It wasn't actually updating on the server. So the model that we were working off was something like 3 months behind where it was. We were asking them about changes, and they go, "Yeah, they're all done. Like here's PDFs. It's finished." But we just never seen that model. It just never actually synced to our side. So, I mean, that's literally an infrastructure issue that they had worse internet than we do in Australia, which is just really saying something.
Sort of thinking about wrong data, it's kind of often the problem is like it's a cumulative effect of just bad data more than anything that can make a job really go pear-shaped and tarnish your company's sort of appearance. We had I don't enjoy working on shopping centres. Generally, I've only had bad experiences with them. But there was one job in particular where it was just the worst case. Like, I wish we had Newforma for that project because, the filing system was terrible. I had to go, so many levels deep to find the Revit model. It'd be like stage 2 construction, stage 2, so it was like a loop of stupid
dash final.
yeah, that kind of thing, just to find information. And when you've got, I think that actually drove a lot of people to leave, which meant we had new staff trying to interpret, at the end of the project, when we're getting all these RFIs, they had to dig through this mountain of trash to find what they needed. So yeah, I think after we got Newforma, I went and put all the documents into the document management system because that project was never end. I kept on having to go back and go through the history and the emails and things like that. So, and again, I think even if we had Newforma or a good project management system, the guy was close to retirement, he probably wouldn't have used it anyway. So just getting people to, they just don't care. Just getting people to use a good system is half the battle. Like, you can show them how good it is, but they just for some reason won't adopt it.
I think from my experience anyway, I found that because I used to do all the internal training, and I had some people like Catherine and Joe who would come to the initial sessions and took that one and ran it with their projects. And then I had other people that would almost never come to these training sessions. But then when they finally did come to one, they'd be like, well, I wish I knew this 2 years ago. It's like, well, I've been asking you for like 2 years to try and come to these training sessions. And I remember in one training session, I had a project leader sort of come in just a little bit later than when it started. And then he sort of sat in and sort of just looked at what we're going through. And he said, can you just hang on for a second? He went out and grabbed his whole project team and said, you guys need to sit down and sort of listen to this. And it wasn't, I think that's where some of that change can be sort of driven from that sort of project leader level and above, to try and encourage, if this is our work practices in how we manage our project information, how we are filing, how we are issuing drawings out and whatnot, then if the project leader is driving that, then of course then hopefully the project team is taking that on and then doing that. And what I think I found that also helped is that with those project team members that were that took on those processes, when they moved to other project teams, and they were asking and demanding their project leaders use that system because that's what they were able to use efficiently. I think half the struggle is that when people go to try and learn, it's not just Newforma, but any new piece of software, you're doing it under like deadlines and constraints where I need to get these drawings at 5 o'clock. You're saying that this is an easy way to do it, but I can't do it right now because I just haven't, I'm trying to learn it under stress, so I'm just going to go back to my old habits and just issue it out the old-fashioned way, and that sort of just makes it really difficult. I'm sure you've sort of found that.
Can you guys comment on the nature of the evolution of files, the movement away from traditional file structures that you mentioned, the movement towards metadata as a good way of searching for information, and the movement towards online and web-based platforms where it's all about metadata and it's all flat file structure?
Do you
point first, and then I can add to that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm super excited about it. Is that one even working? Right, try this one.
You really need it.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks. It always feels weird holding two. No, I'm super excited about that, and I think it's the absolute standard that is sort of coming. I think Autodesk is making some good inroads to it, which I'm really grateful to see them taking some lead on it. I feel like we're kind of still 10 years away from using it as every project does it every day. But even if we are 10 years away, that's not a ludicrous timescale. That's quite reasonable if we try and sort of hit that. Because I think the move towards virtualization in computing ties in really nicely with this as well. So one of the major hurdles I've seen to this is that in order to work on really big amounts of data and particularly graphic intensive things, you just haven't been able to do that without getting all that data down and working on it locally. And the things like Forge and things that are allowing you to put all this data in the cloud and actually see a model and manipulate it on a web browser, all of that's possible because of server GPU instances, like the ability to have a graphics card that's accessible in a server so that you can actually do something and contribute. It's an obvious solution to collaboration and the single source of truth is to stop trying to move all the data between everybody, put all the data in one spot and let everyone sort of remote in and access and edit it. It's an absolute no-brainer that so many other industries have already moved to. There's no big accounting firm where they all download the spreadsheet and work on it on their desktop. That's insanity. They all have it all in a central, VM shared location. You remote in, you edit that database by checking out instances and coming back to this central point. The technology gap to provide that has been, in my opinion, the really big thing dragging its heels. But the great news for that is probably 5 or 6 years ago when NVIDIA came out with the grid cards, it really started to kick off this idea of GPU in the cloud. And particularly Google and Microsoft have really jumped on this bandwagon in the last 2 years. The idea of having Azure instances for Microsoft that are fully GPU enabled, you can just log into, load whatever software you want, have it all running. I think it's the enabler of flat data structures. It's very difficult to do if you can't. No one would do it if if it takes hours and hours to actually interact with it because you're doing it via a web browser on some slow machine off in Pakistan somewhere that's running really slow. So I'm really excited about it. BVN uses virtualization for all of their machines. I sell it as a product because it's something I'm interested in. I think it's a no-brainer that our industry will be there. And the secret sauce in the mix is when you start to get the being able to virtualize your machine and virtualize your project and put it all together. I think that's where it all kind of becomes a special thing that we actually care about.
Do you have any comments, Catherine?
Not really too much to add at this point. So as Joe says, we're fully virtualized, which has been it's been a road without its bumps, but I've worked a lot overseas and collaborated with a lot of partner architects, and that's always a pretty interesting kind of a scenario. I don't need the microphone to it. It is a really great thing to see that people are interested in where we are with that in that space, but also I think just to enable that kind of collaboration and be real about it, I think is a pretty great kind of thing. We use Newforma and we use BIM 360 more and more now, but I think, as Joe says, the technology is a little bit behind us in terms of where we actually aspirationally probably want to be at this point. So it's just what happens in the next couple of years, I think. I think it's all kind of happening. It's just it's hard at this point when we feel like we're a bit transitional, and if you don't necessarily understand all of the ins and outs of it, it's hard to kind of describe to people why they should be getting on board with this sort of thing.
Can I ask how many projects? It's interesting that you're talking about project information management and ADNX hasn't come up yet.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what percentage of your projects are in ADNX and put it in that platform?
ACNX, I think, is quite challenged. It's a pretty kind of awkward. It has improved in leaps and bounds over the last probably, 10 years maybe. It's not great, but it is probably the best in that realm. So, I don't know, it's not saying much for everyone else's systems. We do a lot of government work, and so you end up using, I can't remember what the
Insight,
A-Site, all of those.
Teambinder,
Lost Site
yeah,
ones.
they're all.
And they all have their different quirks, and there'll be, one bit that's kind of good about that thing and then impossible about everything else, and ultimately we get to a point where Aconex actually ends up being probably the best of all of them, but it's not without its flaws. Again, I think it's on a pathway, and Aconex seems to have aspirations to do great things, which I think is a really nice thing to kind of see that pipeline coming, but it's just that it's transitional, so we're sort of waiting with bated breath.
I think if you're like the managing contractor or the client, the owner that is putting the project into Aconex, it's great for them because they've got everyone's data. But as the consultant, you're putting your data in there, and then at the end of the project, you have to pay to get it back. And then you get it back on a USB stick that's going to cost a couple of $1,000. And then when you actually need to refer to that data again in a couple of years' time and find out the version of Java that's on the computer is out of date with the one that Aconex sent you, so then you have to go contact Aconex and get that data back again. But it's difficult as consultants where you are mandated to work on that, so you just have to do it. But I think just as important is making sure that your own internal in-house records and systems are in place, so that regardless of whether or not it's in Aconex, you still have your own legal records to prove that this is what you sent, this is what you transmitted. I think that's really critical.
Yeah.
That comment into the bid and execution plan lecture next session.
That
So-
also depends on your client's agreement with Aconex.
Yes.
We're an Aconex government user.
Yeah.
Our agreement is that all our consultants can retrieve their data at any point at no cost to them. So it's very important that clients recognise their responsibilities, I think, in this respect, to make sure that data is valuable.
And I think one of the, risks also that I see from a consultant perspective is that you're putting your data into Aconex or inside ASI, whatever, but say some dispute happens and you've been taken off the project, all of a sudden you've just been cut access to that project. So it's just as critical to make sure that the stuff that you are putting into Aconex, that you also have it sorted out, because I've seen that sort of happen before where all of a sudden, bam, you don't have access to it because really it's not your project.
It's the exact same reason why you don't store 100% of your files only in the cloud in Dropbox or whatever. You always have a local copy. Or, you don't want to go, everything is safe in this one point of access. And if I can just make one comment about Aconex, and particularly doing BIM consulting, we get a lot of projects where we just have to get added and got to do something on Aconex, and all the communications is via Aconex and that sort of thing. I'm always having problems with it where I haven't been added correctly or something, so I'm not getting the notifications or something on new projects that I'm added to. And the other one that I just want to ask people to train your staff how to use Aconex properly, because there's a lot of issues in Aconex that could just be sorted just by training your staff. So one of the issues I get is people, because you can attach data to it, the messages in Aconex. So I'm getting a lot of stuff where they're sending me files essentially via the internal messages instead of via official issues. And so then I've got conflicting versions of files. Well, the most up-to-date official issue is on here, and then so-and-so sent me this CAD file or Revit file, and it's either behind or in front of the official issue. To me, that's I don't know why Aconex have allowed people to attach these files that aren't official. They should just go, no. If you want to issue it to someone, make an official issue and issue it, and then it's all tracked properly. But since they opened that up, it's been a real nightmare for us. We've had big problems with people sending us stuff that's then unapproved or is out of date, that kind of thing. We had a job where we were asked to do the work and essentially had the signed thing for us to, our engagement to do the work was just attached to a message. And then we went to get paid for it. They're like, oh, no, this wasn't signed off by management, kind of thing. I'm like, are you serious? Like, I can't believe this, is happening in 2019. But
so if you know that that's a problem with the management of the data that you're getting supplied with, what do you do about it?
Well, I reply to them and go, can you please send this via an official issue, which nobody likes me for doing that. You know, I come across as like the troublesome dick who's going, no, this isn't official, I'm not touching it. So it's not great for client relationships to be doing that stuff continuously. But yeah, I've called up people and tried to have a conversation with them about, can you train your staff to do this properly? But I shouldn't have to do that. I'm an end consultant. I shouldn't have to teach people how to use, you know, a system that somebody has paid a hell of a lot of money for, the asset owner or whatever, to make sure things are done correctly. The same thing, obviously, if you're getting stuff outside of there by email.
Yes, I was just going to add to that. Like, would you do this? You would do the same. It's a protocol that you need for your sanity and for your, you know, ability to be able to check that the right information is being sent to you by an appropriate form. You do the same with any platform. It's not an ACNX issue.
No. And the information management fundamentally is only ever going to be as smart as the people who are using it. So you can't, I mean, people are going to do that. We have contractors send RFIs as general correspondence, and the whole thing is set up so that they can track the RFIs. So why send it as a correspondence? But again, that's the user who's got to be responsible for that.
Yeah. My comment there was mostly about the way ACNX have set up, as you are an information management system and you've, within your own system, built a side route. That's the bit that seemed odd to me. It's like, you know, your entire purpose is to track information, and you've built in a way for people to bypass that. It's, you know, it just seems really odd. It's like Gmail making a way for you to send, you know, SMS messages on the side. It's like, well, you know, do the thing that you're set out to do. You're about email. Do that correctly.
And one thing I thought I'd point out also is, can I have just a show of hands, everyone that is working on projects on ACNX? It's quite a few. So one thing you may not know about, and out of the reason why I think ACNX probably is one of the better ones out of all those out there, is that ACNX, if you're the project admin or organisation admin, in the project setup, there is an option to back up all of your organisation's correspondence to an email address. And as a project person, you may not be exposed to that at all, but if you talk to your organisation admin, and normally it's like the IT person or something like that, set up like an email address, your own internal project email address, so that anything that goes in and out to your organisation will automatically be backed up there. And that will help you in some way to make sure that your ACNX correspondence, your data that you're putting into ACNX is being saved off. And so when we set it up for Newforma, which is what we did at BVN, was that there's a feature called project email addressing, so you can just create like an email address without setting up like a shared mailbox or a public folder or anything like that. And then any correspondence that goes to that email address, Newforma just automatically routes it off to the correct project for you. And that was one way that we set up. That wasn't Newforma's sort of intention for the feature, but we use it to make sure that we were backing up any sort of correspondence into ACNX. But even if you're not using Newforma, just set up a project email address so you can back this stuff up, and it'll just save you a little bit in the long run, sort of thing.
I really like that because no one has to do anything. Like anytime you can provide a solution, and I will say Newforma has a bunch of those kind of things. It's got a nice Rabbit plugin to be able to like create and issue your files, and purely by showing people that they could save time and they could issue their drawings a lot faster using the plugin. The fact that it also, when you are issuing those, saves it to Newforma, and with the plugin uploads them to ACNX, because it's saving them time, they're more inclined to use a workflow that then both archives it correctly internally and uploads it and automatically names it and does all the stuff. So, you know, anytime, and this goes for Revit as well, anytime you're trying to train anyone to do something and they're like, I'm too busy, if you can show them that what you're training them is going to save them time, and it's going to save them time now, you've got a much better chance of convincing them to do the right thing and not just go, I'm pretty good at AutoCAD, I'm going to keep doing it,
Yeah, because not everybody will go to ACNX to find the files. In fact, usually you go to your local system, so that's why you want to back it up. Use your project management system to find it more better.
Just to go back to your comment about like having flat folder structure and using metadata and stuff like that, I think there is a point that we may get there. I think part of the issue with, say, relying on just having metadata to be able to find that is relying on people to actually input that metadata in. And you could set it up and people will put it in. You'll have some people I know will definitely put it in on the stuff that they do, but then you'll have other people that just don't even care, and they may not even just name the file. Even if you're trying to implement like a file naming convention, I mean, how often do we go into a project folder and we see like a contract or maybe like a proposal and it's final underscore edit, really final dot PDF, right? And you're like, so which one is it? And sort of thing. But I think
Can that be circumvented by automated processes in a system, not only through something like SharePoint where you force that to happen, but also in anything to be managed with fields and metadata?
yeah, and some of it is that if you try to force it on people as well, that they will just select the first option they can, because it's the easiest way without them having to think about what the options are. I think one of the other ways sort of around that is to both provide a system that does allow people to put that information if they need to, but also allow them to be able to search for it. So I guess one of the things that Newforma does do is, in addition, like for the search, it does search inside the body of the file, the content, the text, it does a text search. So you can look inside a PDF, a Word document, Excel spreadsheet, inside like drawings, DWGs as well, and it'll highlight to you where it found it. And just to give you, I guess, a real world example, is there any BD people here, like business development? Not, right? Okay, so I'm going to have to rag on BD people for a second. But
Sorry.
it's not that bad. No, so what happened was I had our BD person come up and said, look, we put in a proposal a while ago, and we're trying to find that so we can use it again. And it was to do, like, in the proposal we had some quotes about VR stuff that we're doing. The visualization person whose name was attributed, his name is Barry. Can you help me find it? And I said, well, what's the project number? I don't know. What's the project name? I don't know. Can you give me any information about this job proposal that we put in? No. So I did a search in Newforma for Barry and VR, I kid you not, and I searched across all of our archives, which at the time was about 40 terabytes of data. I found the job proposal in 15 minutes in Newforma, the actual file it was, and I said, is this what you're looking for? And then she said, when's the next Newforma training session? So, it's, so I think it's important to be able to have some of those systems, and I know things like SharePoint do ask you as you upload content into document libraries and whatnot to say, this is the required fields that you need to put in to register this document in and make sure that it is the latest version, that sort of thing. But also to provide, I guess, back-end solutions that will still allow people that need to find, maybe they don't know exactly what they're looking for, but still be able to surface that information on as well. But it may get to the point where eventually it will you can use natural language processing to find what you're looking for. But I think the biggest challenge for that is cultural, is trying to get people to sort of use these new systems and also to actually follow those processes that your organisation places upon.
I was actually going to ask you a question for you.
Sure.
Just as, because I think that's a critical issue, is the leadership side of this. So when you're implementing any new thing, whether it be information system management or something, getting people to I find you need a leader who actually has some authority in the organisation to go, no, this is important that it's done correctly, and we're gonna make this a priority, and we're gonna celebrate that it's done. And I've had experiences of the inverse of that when like with Revit implementations where a director's going, no, this guy works with me, he likes working in SketchUp, so he's allowed to work in SketchUp. And the moment that is culturally he's allowed to do it, getting everyone else on board is an absolute mountain to climb. Where a different office where all the directors are like, what are you doing in SketchUp? We're doing this stuff in Revit. The changeover is really rapid because people are like, no, it's part of my job to do this. There isn't exceptions to the rules. So from a leadership point of view, do you want to comment on that?
Oh, well, I think it's always going to be pretty hard. Change management is a difficult thing, and you can't, much as it sounds great to say, okay, everyone, from this point forward, we're not using anything but Revit. It's a basically impossible task. We don't deal in projects that start and stop day to day. They're a 10, 15, 25 year long process. So for us to say this is it at a single point is not really something we can do, and that means that we've got legacy that hangs around, and so you do end up with half the studio using MicroStation still for another 4 years or 5 years. And the other thing is that it's not just us, it's interfacing with the rest of the world. So yes, Revit is a really big thing at the moment, and so it's written into contracts, or there's a requirement for it, and all of the consultants are getting on board. But when that's not a thing, you kind of have to be at the front of that. And does it actually make the process easier at the start? Maybe not, because if no one else is doing it, then it's a difficult thing. And if you're not, I 100% agree with you, Joe, that it has to come from the leadership level, because it's not something that you can expect. I mean, there will be a bit of a groundswell for some interesting stuff, but it's not going to be everyone in the office who does that for generational reasons or for previous experience reasons or whatever it is. It has to be something that comes from the top down, and I think that's something that we try to do at BVN, but it's not necessarily something we're always successful at. And that's a bit to do with the way that people work. So I guess it's a kind of challenging thing, I think. But I think the longevity of the project is fundamentally probably the biggest issue, and then second to that is interfacing with the rest of the world. So I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it's interesting the location of this information. So something that if an office decides in a sort of ground up way that we all really like using Slack, we're all going to start communicating on Slack. That's great, but how is that information being captured? If key decisions about projects are getting communicated with the team on a private Slack channel or on that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's difficult for an organisation because you either need to go, okay, we'll set up a company Slack and we will make sure it's saved and archived and entered into a system that's searchable to sort of rein that in, or you try and stamp it out, which is the opposite. Say, no, don't use this at all. And depending on what the question is at the time, you really have to think long and hard before you draw that line in the sand, because not doing anything seems to me to be incredibly dangerous. To go, oh, are people using stuff in Slack? Well, just let them use it. It's fine.
Yeah, I
You
think
need to do
so.
one or the other.
But it requires then that you have people who know what they're talking about. So you need to be getting advice from people who are up to date with that kind of thing. So Slack comes along, well, okay, maybe it is great. What do we need to know about this thing to be able to say yes or no to it? And then we have to take a stance on it. And rightly or wrongly, you've got to do that at the end of the day. So.
And sometimes it's sort of driven by external, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I remember you telling me, like, we might engage within our internal protocols of how we communicate and whatnot. Then sometimes that's sort of driven by the external consultants that you work with. And I remember you telling me a story about working with some people in China, and all they talk on is WeChat, right?
Yeah.
Like, all project correspondence is in WeChat. Emails aren't being sent or anything like that.
Yeah, which is amazing and kind of challenging as well, because they would often talk amongst themselves in Chinese, and so you'd get these messages that, I've got no idea what that says, so I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this scenario, but just getting that information and doing something with it. I was moved off of that project, so I don't know. And we're no longer doing it, so we're just going to pretend like that never happened, but I guess in some instances there aren't answers to it, and sometimes to our detriment. We have iPads for use on projects, but we don't necessarily engage with them in the way that some studios do. And we cop a bit of backlash from time to time from staff asking, how come we don't use this? How come I can't use, Sketch or Paper or any of those things? And a lot of it is about information management, because if you've got that and it's just sitting in your app on your iPad, on your cloud, how do we know when you are now no longer on the project what all of those things were about? We don't have any of that history of the project when it exists somewhere else. So we have to be quite hardline about this stuff occasionally and sort of say, no, this is not the way that we do it. And if you are going to do it that way, then it gets saved back into the system like any other piece of hard filing information. It's a PDF or it's a JPEG or it's whatever it needs to be to get back in and be valuable data to us, because we can't just, have stuff everywhere. It's not a robust system.
Yeah. And Matt, sorry, I think relating to that as well, can you talk us about some of your challenges that you have or that you guys have when you're collaborating with other external consultants?
I think one of the things I'm trying to figure out whether it's a good idea or not is live model exchange between architects and engineers. I was talking to my just one of our directors yesterday, and he kind of said, why would you want that situation? We kind of want the model to be kind of, if you want to have a couple of days to work on it, and I can kind of see the pros and cons of doing it, and I also don't know which system to use. There's so many different options, BIM 360, and we were trying to use Newforma, or I want to investigate using Newforma, just a shared folder between two people that like BVN. You have it, is that, we're talking to you to set that up. Maybe?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I would refer you to Willis, but yeah, you can talk to me.
Well, Willis is but anyway. Anyway, that's a cool challenge. That's just something that I think it would be a good thing to do, but I also can see it's not necessarily something that we need to do unless it's basically just bad project management if you actually need to do that, because it should be that the only situation where you really want to do that is when you've got a ridiculously short time frame and not enough people to do it, so you need that frequency of exchanging of information. But
that's every project, though.
It is that. It is in a way.
We had an example of that, I think, both a couple of years ago. We were the services modelers, and the architect had sold to the government that we could do everything in one location with one model. Yeah. So we're actually, and it was further than that, we were working the same model as them. And the other guy who worked on it isn't here, but he tells the story about the fish tank. Because a simple hydraulic connection and where the lights were for this fish tank had changed 72 times in a week. If that as services, what we would have done is maybe put it on first and then change, and we would say, well, give us the final copy, then we'll change it. Having things change in front of your eyes all the time when you're doing the services.
Yeah, I think, ideally you have like a really high level of communication where we're going, I just don't work on this until we got it sorted out kind of thing, but is that realistic? I don't know, because people don't communicate as much as they should. But in an ideal world, I can see how it could benefit to you to, you can get the project done much quicker if you can see, and you're not working on outdated information and all this stuff. So I want to do it more, but I just haven't actually.
Well, another project we had, and we were the ones lead contractor on this one, lead consultant, even though we were the services.
Speak up a bit.
Sorry, even though we were the services. And we got towards the end of the project, and we just invited everyone into our office and linked the server together to sort out coordination problems. Yeah. Because that's where it can be valuable, because you might have to update the model.
Yes. So
I've seen a lot of value in it near the end of the project. Well, I do always find funny that the structural engineers and the mechanical engineers, they're just not used to the crazy level of change that architects are doing as they're going through a design process. And you're changing so much all the time. I'm like, yeah, we know. It sucks for us too. Like, we had to do all those changes. So,
you get architects that don't know how the services work.
Yeah.
An architect can take 5 minutes to change a toilet.
Yeah.
And that'll take a hydraulic a full day to do.
Yeah. As part of BIM Consulting, we're doing a lot of this coordination meetings and that. We definitely are finding getting good protocols set up early on is very helpful too, so people understand when they're due to exchange files, those sort of things, and doing those generally at a shorter interval than people wanted to. So people are like, let's do it every 2 weeks. That means we probably should do it weekly. But yeah, and on ones where we have done sort of live models or I mean, the idea of putting it all in a single model seems a bit flawed anyway, and I've tried it and it works. But if we were all in house in one company and we were doing the file, we would probably still have a mech file, architectural file that was all linked in anyway. So all I really want is the ability to reload the mechanical file and see the latest one when I want to. So we've used a few workflows for that. One of them was just having a Dropbox set up in the background that and it was just running a script that at the other end would just copy their live file into a Dropbox, which would sync to our end. So it was syncing, I think we had it sync every night. And then at our end, if we wanted to see the latest one, we would just do a reload from and pick that one, and we could see the up to the minute one. But the one that was loaded the majority of the time was the official issue, the weekly one. So that's what we were working on. But we can at any point just reload the up to the minute one. So if we have asked for something to be done, we can go in and check and see if they've done it. Oh, they've done it already. Cool, I'll load it and work on it. We can load it. Oh, they haven't done it already. Okay, I'll go back to it. That worked really well, and it was, it was essentially free. We just used the free Dropbox account, and it was like a batch file that someone, IT guy wrote. There was 4 lines or something in it to copy on a
One
time.
step above that would be, say, from a mechanical perspective, working in a hospital. And as architects, you've done a little bit of work over here, but you're mostly working in that area. A mechanical guy who wants to update a little bit here, he could load your architecture. But the guys that are working over here don't want to load the latest one. So I don't know whether we can do that. That's more a Revit question.
Yeah, I mean, you can. But you would essentially load both, put them on separate work sets, and they can open and close them. But I mean, it's the same thing with any piece of data that you're going back and forth. The frequency that you're getting updates for the particular design where it changes a lot is really critical. And the major changes for coordination, one of the big issues we have there is even if you have a big meeting, you go in and you go, these are all the clashes, everyone needs to move their stuff. There's a lot of dependencies. So, the mech guy can't move his stuff until the fire guy moves his thing, until the electrical guy moves his thing. So sometimes it takes sort of 10 rounds of going through. And even though you go to a clash and go, okay, last week you said you were going to move this 300 mil to the right. He said, I did, but that meant I had to move this duct, that now clashes with this, that. And it just so we end up with this cycle that ideally kind of winds down to lesser and lesser sort of changes until you're pretty well coordinated. And then they go to site and do whatever they want anyway. So,
just got to be mindful. We've got about 10 minutes. Do you guys out there have questions that you want to ask? Yeah. Sorry, just.
We've been talking a lot, I guess, about project information management. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about maybe take a step back and even wider, like office management. Talking about, like, for example, people's skill registers or even people's whereabouts, where they might be updating, things like that, and how that maybe links and whether there could be sort of an idea of one whole system for the office as opposed to kind of just the project.
What's that? It's the system they're bringing in China for like social credits, where they track everyone with facial recognition, and if you jaywalking, you lose some social credits, that sort of thing. I like that idea. That's very good. I like the idea that you go explode CAD file in your Revit thing, that you lose social credit in the office. That kind of stuff. I think it is a fascinating thing. We try to capture a lot of that. BiLT actually does a really good job of capturing historical data on things. I think they do anyway. But yeah, it's fascinating to even just trying to keep a basic skill register of who's attended what training, and that sort of thing. It's surprisingly difficult to know that it's up to date and the validity of that information. So, they attended the training on Newforma. Does that actually mean they know how to use it, or did they just attend the training and look at their phone for the time? There's a lot of questionable bits about getting quality of data. So I liked the idea that you need to collect sort of qualitative and quantitative data on these things. So you want to have some qualitative thing where you go rate yourself how good you are in this, but then you also want like a test that actually gives you a hard number to sort of put those things together. Because people are really bad at that. I've done this a lot, where you get a survey from everybody in the office as to how good, just rate yourself how good you are at Revit. And you're an expert or a newbie, 1 to 10, pick a number. And you'll always get the newbie who thinks he's amazing, who just doesn't know what he doesn't know, and he's probably the most dangerous person on any project. And you often get people who are very sort of self-deprecating, who are amazing, who go, I'm just learning, and and what are you doing? I'm doing all the coding, and I'm doing. You're the best person in the whole office here. And no, I'm sort of thing. So those things are really hard to get quality information on, because people are terrible at judging themselves or even others. Do you agree?
No, they are. I think that's true. And I think in the end, the more data points you have, probably the better. So if you can get people to self-assess, and then you can get others to assess them, and then you get these tests. Although we did do a test when we first rolled out Revit, and everyone had to take the test, and the person who scored the highest had never opened Revit before. So it's interesting.
Good at tests. Good at tests.
Good at tests. She took her time. She got through it. So there's always pluses and minuses to those things. We try to keep everything, that sort of personal data, in a single system. Again, it's up to people to manage that to a certain extent. Otherwise, we've got someone running around the studio trying to work out what everyone's up to at every point in their career or their general life. The other thing that I think is a kind of nice thing, I don't know how these guys will feel about it, but we keep the data on people once they've gone. So we still have Joe and Willis on our system. You can find them in our people finder. We have their photos. We have the projects they worked on, and we understand everything about them while they were at BBN. I don't know that they've been updated to say where you go to, because that's kind of,
Is mine like a
beyond
0-star rating or something?
I mean, we're not giving credit points at this stage, but I would definitely suggest that. I think it's nice to know the history. It sounds like I'm sort of really spruiking for archival information, but it is good to have a track of that and to be able to get it all in one place. That's kind of the personal stuff. In that same system, we do all our financials, and we also have all the BD information as well. But again, it's all up to people who are working on the projects to update that information. So, cost of the project, or the lifespan of the project, or the kind of, what is the standard data about this thing, or what are the value adds, or how many spaces we're in here, or what's the schedule of accommodation, is it actually attached? And some of those are really great and really detailed, and others of them just aren't, because the person didn't have time to do it and suddenly they were on something else. So it's a cultural shift, I suspect, tracking that kind of information.
Then I think like for personal information in terms of ex-employees and whatnot, I guess it's useful in that if that person ever does come back, and as we know within like the industry, it is very circular. People move around a lot, but then they also do come back, and there's generally no sort of ill sort of feeling or anything like that. So when that person does come back, then at least you can sort of kick back off, and you do have that written history of where they're up to. I think with that sort of information, it's either within like your financial system or your HR system, but also just as importantly is having something on like your intranet, so that people I think what is really important is being able to have a self-service capability, so that people are able to go and manage that data themselves. If they're always having forever to sort of bother the admin person to do it, and it never gets done because they're busy, which may be genuine, then it just won't get done. But it can also go the other way, in that if you're just opening up for entirely self-service, where I remember there was a point where the phone directory was all entirely self-service, and no one had a profile picture, and no one's phone number was updated, so no one could ever call anyone because it was all self-service and no one cared enough to do it. And things like, I guess, working to see whether or not people are in the office or not, something like using presence from Skype or Microsoft Teams that tells when someone's logged in, and building that into the intranet so that you can tell if someone's out of the office. I think that would definitely sort of help towards that, and make sure that that information is accurate. If the systems themselves are providing that information, especially for something like presence, then you're not relying upon someone to update it and then know that the out of office message says that they're away in Hawaii for 6 weeks, but you just saw them last week in the office. They just haven't updated it.
I'm a big fan. I know there's an awkward line in the sand for the sort of big brother component of this, like how much can you automate the tracking of. But I use a piece of software called Rescue Time, and it just tracks everything that I do on my computer. Not only I can see that data, but I try to make a point of looking at it every morning to see how productive I was the day before. And it breaks it down by every application that you were using, and you can assign those, whether they're productive time or wasted time. So, if you open it up and you go, yesterday I was at work for 8 hours, there was 3 hours of YouTube. Oh, really,
It was learning YouTube.
But you could have been researching a talk or doing something specific. You can go in and adjust that and go, no, just yesterday that was productive time. I was watching training, rescue time. But I found that to be a really big change in the way I work day to day, with the self-reflection and being able, because you can set goals for yourself too. So I set a goal of, I think it's 6 hours of productive time a day, and it's always a bit sad when you don't quite get the goal and that sort of thing. But there's other great bits that come out of it, like if you look at your week, it'll tell you how many hours you've worked outside of standard working hours too, so you can start to look at your work-life balance and go, man, I'm getting a bit out of control here. I've done 30 hours outside of work hours. I really need to dial that back and look at what I'm doing. I'm probably taking on too much work. So I've encouraged everyone in our office to do it, and there is a business version of it where everyone in the whole office can do it, and then that data is accessible to management as well, and it can be anonymized or it can be with all the data intact. No one seemed keen on that. I think it would be incredibly
I
valuable.
sent my data to my managers because
Yeah,
I
need
figured
to
like
raise
our
the-
timesheet, my timesheet doesn't really tell me then what I do. So that was actually, this is how much time I spend in Revit, this is how much time I spend in Outlook, and
Yeah.
Slack.
We just got one more question
Oh,
there
sorry.
just before we finish up.
Oh, sure, thanks. Look, something that we've been trying to think about in our organisation lately is the accuracy of those built models, and this harks back to the conversation we had at the start. And we too know that what gets built doesn't necessarily reflect what the designers' models look like, what the subcontractors' models look like at the last iteration, which is a concern for us. So I just wanted to know what the panel thinks about the way forward on this, because some of the options we've been thinking about are, as was suggested, going in, doing point clouds at various points in time, then someone's got to validate those, build those back into the model, get all subcontractors to do that, bring it back together again. And if we invest in that, we then give that model back to another designer in 4 years' time, put it in the asset information model, and again the designers get the model and say, well, I'm not sure I trust this, or I can't read this, or it's IFC, it's not good enough. So, look, is it better to just kind of say it's too hard, and every time we start a project, we're just going to go in, pull the ceilings down, do a point cloud, work from what's there? Or is there a third better way?
I think in the first instance you want to know what you're actually like. Why are you doing it? If you think you need the information for something, if you are going to use it for FM purposes, like Arup will almost certainly collect all the data from that model that they've now built. Then great, go ahead and do that, and invest in putting people on site to update the model as it goes, and make sure that there's constant checking, you're doing point clouds and those kinds of things. And I think put time and energy into focusing on what that is and collecting accurate data in whatever way is kind of best for you. If you don't think you need it, and I mean, rightly or wrongly, maybe you do need it and you just don't think you do, but no one's going to invest in something that they don't think at some point in the future they're going to need. So it's kind of, that's largely where it ends up sitting. We for our own purposes like to put that kind of level of information into models because we're kind of doing it anyway. So if we're just adding a bit more information, it sort of helps us to understand what we're up to. But I understand it's a quite difficult thing, but I think ultimately just the question in the first instance is probably the best place to start, and then where you go from there is going to be led by that, and I imagine it's pretty specific to the task.
I would definitely say don't give up because it's too hard, because we wouldn't get anywhere if we did that. But I think one of the reasons that we don't trust the information we're getting all the time is we ask the person who gives it to us, is this valid? Is it up to date? And they go, we have no idea. So I think you're saying from government, if it was mandated from government and we knew that we were receiving a model from government, and you could say to us, this was just here's the dates where it was updated, here's the changes, here's essentially the change log of the model, here's the point clouds that we use to validate if they're available if need be, then we would start off with the assumption that this is right, which is a much better place to go. We're pretty sure we can trust this, let's just start working. When we start getting stuff that we go, it's in a really old format and it's very dodgy information, just on the face of it looks dodgy, we have to start with, we can't really trust any of this, let's have to go out and validate it. I don't think there's any need to go, let's pull down ceilings and scan every time. It's very rare at this point to actually come across a job that has any of the kind of information that you're talking about, like scan updated models. So when you do get the opportunity to receive one, we could not be happier to receive that kind of thing and go, great, we can just start our work. And particularly one of our Elf Tribe does a lot of fit out work, and it's a part of the job that we don't get paid for is modelling the bit that isn't the interiors fit out. So we always have to model out like the building and the structure just so that we can actually do the design work of doing the fit out around it. If you could actually go, here's a model, it's validated, it's pretty cool. I know for a fact that they could discount the price that they actually quote for the job because they're like, yeah, we literally open up and start modelling. So I think for anything that's a large asset, your hospitals, universities, anything like that, it's an absolute no-brainer that you would want to have a model that you can put a stamp of approval on to say this is accurate, you can use it, go ahead and start. But you can't put that stamp on it unless you can prove that you did it, and I think point clouds are a great way to do that, where you can go, here's the model, there's the point cloud that validated it. I can provide you both if you want to do your own validation, but that is the validation we've provided.
That's good to know that would give you confidence.
Hugely.
Cool. So we've sort of gone slightly over, but please thank our panelists, Catherine and Joe.